was a completely free market system where anybody could sell anything, and the only guidelines were that you can't sell anything that sole purpose is to directly harm others, so things like stolen credit cards are not allowed. He started this as an experiment, and of course drugs were introduced to the market, and you know that for some people that's red flags. For most, I think, logical people, drugs, especially marijuana, which is the primary product of the website, should be legal anyway, so that's not a conversation we need to have here. So eventually what his defense argued is that he gave up the website to somebody else and got out, and because not just the American government was getting pressure from all over the world because they were drug laundering all throughout the world through this website, and a lot of it went through airports like O'Hare through America. So they were getting a lot of pressure to arrest someone and close the website. And they didn't want to close the website without arresting someone because, of course, you need to make an example out of the perpetrator of this. So the trial just ended recently. Unfortunately, the jury decided that Ross was guilty on all 7 counts, and those counts included things like drug trafficking, abetting to drug trafficking, being a kingpin of a drug trafficking website, a conspiracy to hack, and other derivatives of such things. And Roger, I would say, almost single-handedly helped the defense have the funds to do the best job they can. They were working pro bono, which is amazing. Draytel is an amazing person for doing this. But people need to get paid and people do a better job when they have funds. So I think Roger was a really key figure in helping the trial actually function from the defense's side. So initially we went down there. I'd like to also give a shout out to Michelle Seven, who's known as Bitcoin Bell on Twitter, and her and I put together a protest in front of the courthouse, and again Roger helped with funding that. And we had a good turnout actually. People from New Hampshire came down, people like from Copblock and Josie Wales. I'd like to just give a shout out to all of them. And if I'm not going to mention everyone because again I have to make a summary of this. So we did the protest. The judge was very unhappy because I was in the courtroom while the protest was going on. The judge was very unhappy with us. The justice, who is the person who makes sure the trial functions again, like in the moment, and he says he does the Bible, so that's the justice, okay? So he made a comment like, "Oh, the organizers of the protest are here." So it was definitely on the radar. And then at the end of the first day, she said, "Anybody with a poster outside tomorrow or any kind of handing out pamphlets, we will isolate the jury," which means they will take the jury and drive them back and forth from a hotel, from an isolated location, which is bad because there are kingpin drug charges in the trial, so they'll jump to the conclusion that their life is in danger. So it would have been really not good for that to happen. So Draytel asked us indirectly to stop the protest, which we did, and we focused our efforts on honest reporting after that. So as you can see, the judge already had it in for that kind of action, and her entire attitude throughout the trial was very pro-prosecution, and you could see her guiding them in the right direction. And near the very end, when the jury was already very close to going and deliberating, she softened up and she actually had a moment where she yelled at the prosecution, and I think she was at a point where it's almost over, I've done my job, Schumer's going to be happy, Ross is going to go behind bars, and that's exactly how it ended. Yeah, she was appointed by Chuck Schumer, so she had a job to do, and that's all it was to her.
So a little bit of additional background there. So this judge apparently was appointed by Chuck Schumer, who's a senator from New York, who was one of the most outspoken senators speaking out against the Silk Road and calling to have that shut down, and probably one of the worst senators in the entire United States. Like a really, really horrible human being who I think in the history books, he'll go down and they'll look at him and similar ways to a lot of other bad guys, to not name too many specific names. But people need to keep in mind, the judge, the prosecutor, and the attorney all work for the same organization. They all get paid from the same place. They're all on the same team. And there's not much you can do about that. But I want to talk about a couple of happy things that are related to the Silk Road, since I don't think I could possibly have an audience where I can be any more likely to be preaching to the choir here. So the war on drugs is coming to an end. It is game, set, match. It is over. And I can tell all of you already believe that. And it's because, but for those that maybe are going to watch on the internet at some point to hear about this, it's because of this amazing, wonderful technology called Bitcoin and decentralized markets that are coming. And yeah, they shut down the Silk Road, and poor Ross Ulbricht is in prison and probably going to be there for quite a while. But there's already more than a dozen other websites doing the exact same thing with more products than Silk Road ever had. And it's coming, it can't be stopped. Anybody, anywhere in the world can participate in these. So the war on drugs has been lost. And these people that are trying, has been lost by the pro-drug warriors. Freedom is winning in the war on drugs. People are going to be able to buy and sell whatever they want without having to get permission from anyone. And I think that is a really wonderful thing. And it's really sad, all the people that were involved in the Silk Road case. And Ross Ulbricht's kind of been the guy that's gotten all the media attention, but I've gotten maybe close to a dozen different emails from various people that were, that were arrested as part of the Silk Road thing, and those people are having their lives destroyed as well. And these are all people who haven't hurt anybody. And I would be absolutely stunned if there aren't at least one or two undercover government agents attending this conference here. And if you're in the audience here listening to me right now, take a look around this room. Everybody in this room is simply advocating that everybody leave everybody else alone to do anything that's peaceful. And if you're working for the government, that means that you think peaceful people shouldn't be allowed. And I see Jeff raising his hand. You see that undercover agent in the back there? And I can't quite hear what he says, but I think he's confessing to be the agent. But on a serious note, what I do want to point out to you, if you are the undercover government agent here, all we're advocating is that peaceful people be allowed to engage in peaceful acts with other peaceful individuals. It's not craziness, it's not madness, it's the way just about all of us interact on each other on a day-to-day basis in all of our daily lives. And if you're opposed to that, that means you're the bad guy. Yep. And you need to spend a few moments looking into your own heart and your own mind and think about that. If you're in favor of the war on drugs, that means you want to lock peaceful people in cages simply for possessing a plant or a chemical that you don't think that they should be allowed to possess. But you have no more of a right to be able to decide that than any other human being on this planet. We're all human beings living on the same planet, and just because you put on a fancy suit and have a shiny badge and work in buildings with flags out in front of it doesn't mean you have the moral authority to do the things that you're doing. And so look inside your heart, think about it, and quit your job. Find honest work.
Mistake. Darknet markets are digital free markets. For all of human history, men have sought to communicate, trade, and produce freely. And today we have the best tools that humanity has ever produced for doing that. You can create private agreements with only one other person and interact with them in a business manner however you want. A third party cannot come in and arbitrate because they feel like geographically they own the area. I hear so often that the NSA or the government is omnipotent. They're spying on everybody, they see everything that you do. Now that may be true, but it's only true in the sense that you have to identify the prison you're in before you can escape it. And today, we have better technology for respecting privacy and free trade than we've ever had in all of human history.
What I wanted to talk about, from what I saw from inside the courtroom, is a little bit touching on what Roger Muir just said about trying to get through to that undercover agent if they're here. Is when I was watching the testimony, I saw a couple of full, there he is again, Jeff. There was a couple of full days of testimony that I was able to witness. And the first day was the prosecution's agent was basically testifying about all the things that he found on Silk Road. And the second day was mostly cross-examination. And what I was struck by was all the things that whoever was running the Silk Road, and we still don't know who it is, and we may have an idea, but whoever was running the Silk Road, all the things that person was doing to try to have good customer service, had customer support, had a buyer's guide, had a seller's guide, had escrow, had a system to arbitrate disputes if there was a dispute between a vendor and a buyer. So all these things was something that a good business person, someone who's an ethical person, would be doing. And these were the exact same things that were being used to add charges of, well, escrow, that's money laundering. Well, that's, a coin tumbler, that's money laundering. Buyers and sellers, that's criminal conspiracy. So it just struck me that it's like you target the goodness of people and try to use that against them. And when I was listening to the agent talk on the stand, I'm like, the people who were on Silk Road who were trying to screw people over, who were lying to people, trying to befriend them, were police for the most part. We're the police,
The police ran the Silk Road by that time.
Pretty much, they did, yeah. So, and that's just what struck me. And what Roger was saying about how the judge and the prosecutor are paid by the same person, that's true, but they're usually more subtle about it. They don't try to make it so obvious that they're working on the same team. In this case, I don't know, they just didn't even try to cover it up. It was just obvious that the judge was automatically ruling with the prosecution no matter what. Even when she didn't want to, even when she agreed with the defense's argument, she still found a way to kind of, okay, I'll go along with you. And it was just so crazy just to see it so obvious and out in the open and so flagrant and not even trying to cover it up at all. And I think that what can change that is just exposing it. I was there, I wrote about it a little bit, and Julia reported on it. And by the way, thank you to Roger and Julia for, I wouldn't have been out there if it wasn't for their support. So what they did. Just take that first step, do whatever you can to help out in this situation.
So, what does the guilty verdict mean? The fear at the very start of this whole process was that he will get a guilty verdict and that will open floodgates to poor policy and that law. And we were seeing this even before the Silk Road verdict, in cases like with FedEx, where people in Canada were sending prescription pills illegally to people in America, and FedEx asked the government to give them a list of names so they can check those specific packages. Instead, they were just indicted. So that kind of logic is called transferred intent. And of course, just like with violence, the state can enact violence on us with zero repercussions, but it doesn't work the other way around. So if I go and sell Coke to a 10-year-old on a government public sidewalk, there's no transferred intent to the government by utilizing their medium that exists to exchange the narcotics. Now, if I use the Silk Road, then it does, because I don't work for the state, and they do. So that's gonna, I don't want to rain on the parade of positivity, but these are real fears that we have going in the future. And now that they were so easily able to, they haven't sentenced him yet, it's going to be May 10th, but now that they so easily got a guilty verdict, the jury took 30 minutes, no, 3 hours. They took 3 hours, but with 2 breaks. So
Just
they
long
really
enough to
took,
get their lunch break in.
right, they got their lunch break and their snack, and they took 3 hours, probably really 2 hours, to make this decision. Now, what the jury's supposed to do, there's seven indictments. They're supposed to go through every one of them, have a rigorous debate, look through, package this thick of transcript from the duration of the trial that was recorded for them, and on each one vote. You can't do that in 2 hours in a reasonable, moral, way in which you can assume they debated. They didn't debate anything. They went through the list. That's 2 hours is how long it took them to do the paperwork. So, I mean, I'm still a little bit demoralized from the entire process because of how inhuman these people were. And one of them was even the youngest woman. She was smiling as she sentenced this man, like as she decided the fate of this 30-year-old dude. So, don't need to rain on that. But I think if more people actually thought about things instead of going from their day to day and just wanting to live without having any concern for what is happening around them, then we would have our dreams come true. But the fact of the matter is, I'm assuming that we all tend to stick to people that bring joy into our lives, which probably are people that are aligned with similar views, not enacting violence, not necessarily anarchists or libertarians, but people who aren't statists vigorously. Now you go on the subway, you go to a bar, you go, I don't know, you just wait in line at some government building and you start talking to people, you forget that these people exist and these people don't think. And sometimes you're surprised and you get through to someone and you find out people do care, but after seeing that jury, which was not a jury of his peers, a jury of his peers would have been, PhD graduates, computer programmers, economists, people in science programs, people with startups, small businesses. They were almost all of them were government workers, almost all of them, and that was not by accident.
All over 40 almost.
Well, except for that one.
No.
Except for
Only one was 27, most of them were over 50.
Jeez.
And just the funniest thing to me, I mentioned the justice earlier. The trial ended. I ran outside for a bit just because I needed to call someone to talk to someone. I came back in and everyone was gone from the courtroom. And I go into the elevator and the justice cleans everything up, so he was gone last year. So he shares an elevator with me, and he knows me now. I spent a month with this dude in the courtroom. And he was the one who said, oh, the organizers of the protests are here. And he gets in the elevator with me, and he looks at me, and he says, are you okay? And I think about that. Justice asked me if I was okay. And I said, no, I'm not okay, and neither is America.
Hell yeah. Yeah.
I want to share with you what my experience was like there. I felt that what happened and some of the most significant things that happened in the courtroom were not reported at all by the mainstream media. There were some independent media sources that got in. But part of the reason that happened was I think it was a full day. The first day that the defense for Russell cross-examined the star witness who performed most of the investigation. That first day when Draytel, the defense lawyer, tore that guy apart, was redacted from the court transcript. And after that happened, I'm not a legal scholar, but what it looked like to me was the simple word would be censorship. The first day he was freely allowed to ask questions, and he got their star witness boy to admit that he had been working on this case for 2 years and thought Trent Power Roberts was somebody else, not Ross Ulbricht, until only 2 weeks before they arrested him. He only saw his picture, I think it was 2 days before they arrested him. And not only that, but he also got him to admit that he believed that there was more than one drug car Roberts, probably more than two. And those to me are extremely significant facts. The defense, that's most of their case, to prove that there was some possibility that, some reasonable doubt that it could have been somebody else, or that not all the charges were 100% on this guy. Who do we really know was doing this? That was the biggest thing that I noticed that wasn't reported on, because it was redacted. The last bit of that was the cross-examination was happening on a Friday, and honestly, that day the prosecuting lawyer was totally humiliated in front of everybody. The audience was loudly laughing at him. We had some public defense attorneys that were sitting in here. The arguments of the prosecution was attempting to make for why the defense lawyer shouldn't have been allowed to ask the questions he was asking were laughable, according to the public attorneys. The judge was visibly turning over to the other side. She was seeing it as a possibility that the government's case was not as, tight as they said it was. But it was a long weekend, and she eventually agreed to have both sides write a letter that she would read over the weekend. And after that weekend, she was back to hardcore and basically totally folded when on the previous day, she was siding entirely with the defense on the argument that the prosecution was giving that he shouldn't be allowed to ask most of the questions he was asking, because he had to prove some type of structure and relevance to every question, when all of the questions were quite relevant, and he was tearing up their witness that's his job. That's all. I'll turn it over to Roger.
So I know it's been a long day, and thank you all for being here, but I want to end this on a positive note. So while everything that went on with Ross Ulbricht is a tragedy, and it's horrible, and brings tears to most of our eyes when we think about it, it's not just Ross Ulbricht. There are millions of people around the world having their lives destroyed by the drug war, and by these people who haven't thought about it and haven't figured out the fact that each human being owns their own body and has the absolute right to put whatever they want into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And our job, as people who have figured that out, that each individual owns themselves, are to build the systems that strip away the power from those people and take away the power that they have to hurt us.
Yes.
And the place where I see the most of that going on is within the Bitcoin community. I've been involved in Bitcoin for over 4 years now, when Bitcoin was less than $1 each. And I remember when I first got involved in Bitcoin and went on the Bitcoin forums and discussion boards, almost everybody there was an anarchist. Almost all of them. And what that means is, as Bitcoin becomes more and more popular, which I think it is and pretty clearly is happening, there's going to be a whole bunch of filthy rich anarchists running around the world. And they're going to be more than happy to spend that money to help create these systems that strip away power from the state. So if you're not already involved in Bitcoin, get involved with it right now. Start using it in your day-to-day life. It's going to strip away the power from every single government on the entire planet. And as anarchists, all of us should be incredibly excited about that.
Darknet entrepreneurs will save the world and rebuild society.
I guess the question is, if people aren't tired, it sounds like you guys have some energy left. So.
Okay. Oh, you can also write to Ross in prison. This is very important because he is a very caring and sensitive person. It's very clear from practically everything he's written. get to know him. There's some great articles online, for example, Kingpin, Drug Dealer, or Saint, I think, on Casey Research by Paul Rosenberg. It goes into
Paul is wonderful.
who this guy is. Paul Rosenberg is wonderful. Ross Ulbricht was a very beautiful person. Please write to him. Go to freeross.org and go to the Contact Us page. Send him some compassion and love.
And you'll post it on Facebook.
And we'll get it posted on the Anarchapulco Facebook group.
And there, I know the trial's over, but they are going to do an appeal. Anybody have any, extra money, scrounge it up. Lynn still needs help financially for the appeal. It's a year-long process. It's expensive, so anybody have anything extra, she would definitely appreciate it.
All right, question.
Questions?
That's you.
I don't think I know.
Hi. My name is Jorge Truco. I come from the Patagonia region of Argentina. I got involved in Bitcoin like a year ago. Actually discussing this with Jeff Berwick and his friend Luis, who I did an Anarchat show in Spanish. And I did one with Jeff in English too. And it took me some time to understand the concept of Bitcoin, but once I understood it, I realized the potential it has and implications it has. So I convinced some people in my country, because my goal, the meaning of what gives my life a meaning right now is spreading the message of liberty. That's why I'm here. And based on the implications of Bitcoin, I convinced a bunch of people applying Bitcoin. Well, we know Bitcoin went down. And so I'm being asked, is Bitcoin reliable? I mean, is it trustworthy and is it volatile? Because, they bought it when it was 600 and now it's 280.
Tell them that they didn't lose any money unless they sold.
What's that? So I wanted to ask you, I think it is a magnificent concept, but isn't it just good for doing fast transactions or wire transfers or something like that? Or is it something that you want to keep? Because I'm being asked that question all the time. I'm being, actually responsible for convincing people of buying Bitcoin. And so I don't know the answer. It went from, but I got into that. It was 600 and now it's 280 or something like that.
I'm sure Roger has a good answer to this. My answer is try meeting people who are really into Bitcoin, who develop it or build businesses by it. They are some of the most passionate and creative people I've ever met. And the concentration of people, it's like 90% or more, really, really high quality, passionate, exceptionally creative people are into this because they're willing to bet their own time and sacred creative energy on something that might be better. And in their logical mind, they think that it already is and that they trust it. That's where they're putting their time, and that means a lot to me. In economy, the value of something is entirely based on who's working on it and how motivated they are in order to build a new society.
As someone who's been around Bitcoin longer than most people, I've heard all these exact same questions. Back when Bitcoin went from 10 cents to $1, then back to 50 cents, people were saying the exact same sort of things. And then when Bitcoin went from around $1 up to $32, and then back down to $2 or $3, the exact same things. And now I'm hearing the questions again today, and I think it's all about time horizon. Like Bitcoin is get rich in the next 6 months scheme or anything like that. Bitcoin is a tool that's going to free everybody on the entire planet to interact with everybody else without having to require permission from anybody else. And if you stop and think about that for a minute, there's now a payment system, and only one type of money works in that payment system that allows anyone to transact with anyone else anywhere on the planet without having to ask for permission from anyone, including governments. Are people going to start to use that? And if you think the answer is yes, then hold on to your Bitcoins because we're just getting started in terms of the price.
Well, thanks for your answer. My guess was, or is, you know, what I tell people is, as soon as Bitcoin acquires acceptance from entities like, I don't know, Amazon or PayPal or whatever, like that, and it becomes worldwide accepted, it's going to have to go up, or it's going to have to stabilize and do what you're saying it will do. But in the short run, you know, convincing people to buy Bitcoin caused me to have problems.
Well, try to sell people on Bitcoin in the philosophy, not the monetary possible gain. And if your friends are fixated on that, like I said earlier, I think you heard me, but they didn't lose any money unless they sold low. So if they bought at 600 and they sold at 200, yeah, they lost money. But if they bought at 600 and went down, they sell their Bitcoin, they haven't lost money, right? So that's what you can tell them.
Thank you.
Just a quick point on that. As an anarchist, I don't think it's my business to tell people what to do with their money. So I've never told anybody to buy Bitcoin. Never. I buy Bitcoin, I use it, I tell businesses to accept Bitcoin, but I've never said you gotta go out and buy Bitcoin, it's gonna go up. I've never told people that. Everybody I've ever talked to Bitcoin about, I've always told them the same thing. I have Bitcoin, I don't know if you should have Bitcoin, I have Bitcoin. It's an experimental technology. So you should, don't buy more than you're comfortable possibly risking. So I would never, if you want to buy it, I can show you how you can get some, but we don't need to, if it's really good, you don't need to convince people to use it. Just use it yourself and automatically other people will start to use it. So you don't need to convince people to use something.
One last answer. I believe the philosophy of Bitcoin is good at heart, and that's why I support it. No other reason. It's not because primarily I think it's going to explode. I think it's a really good thing to do. It's a really good way to live.
I just want to say that Sunday we have a bunch of people talking about Bitcoin, so a lot of the questions you have will be answered, or you'll have the opportunity to ask them again. I'd like to keep the last few questions specifically to the trial, because this is a good opportunity. Is your question for the trial?
Yeah, and then she hands me back the microphone, and it's not about the trial.
Oh, sure.
No, but I wanted to talk about what you said, Roger. I moved to Mexico in 2006. I was an executive in the United States making very good money, and I've suffered ever since I've gotten here economically. But